boundaries are really there to keep the people that you love and care about in your life as you grow and evolve. And that's something that when you realize that that's a tool, it's not to shut them out or to play from a scarce place. It's actually playing from a very abundant place.
There are some really destructive people out there, but the majority of people, they treat us the way that they do because they think they can. And the way that we start to change that is through the boundaries that we set, the communication that we have, and the truths within ourselves that we honor. Hey everybody, it's Bianca.
And it's Emilia.
Welcome to another episode of Evolve Ventures, where we are helping growth-minded humans evolve by breaking one limiting belief at a time. We hope you enjoyed the last episode, number 233, Motivation Monday, overcoming the fear of outgrowing people. We've all been there. It ain't easy. For today, number 234, tools for setting boundaries. Boundaries and boundary setting is one of the topics that I speak to clients with the most about. Same. I think we're in a culture and in a time where setting boundaries has just become progressively more difficult.
Oh yeah.
It's so uncomfortable for so many of us, and we don't know how to do it. We don't feel capable of doing it. We don't feel certain in our ability to do it. And what we are going to be diving into today is what is a really simple 3-step process for setting boundaries so that you can feel confident, so that you can feel assertive, so that you can feel as though your needs are being met and they're being met effectively. That is what we're going to be diving into today. Any thoughts, Em, on your end before we dive into this process?
I'm thrilled that we're talking about this, and I'm excited to bring this more into the fold around Evolve and what we speak about. Because to your point, I know that there is a huge need here that is going wildly unmet. And let's get into it. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. About a month and a half ago, for anyone who's a long-term listener of the show, you'll know that my relationship with my family has been kind of up and down over the last couple of years, just due to different challenges that have come up. I'll leave it there, but just due to different challenges and situations that have come up. And within the last couple of months, I've been really taking a much more proactive role in trying to lead my family and doing really proactive family leadership, thanks to Emilia and her help. I'm going to give you that credit, my friend. So I've been really intentional about the way that I show up with my family, when I show up with them, how I present myself when I'm there, and what I say yes and no to. And it's been a really long journey, and I'm still not perfect at it, but I'm making headway. I'm making a lot of progress in this arena. And so about a month and a half ago, because of the relationship getting better, I'm more willing to do things with my family and for my family. And so my dad had asked me if I could start watching our family dog once a week on Mondays, because I obviously live alone. I work from home, and nobody is home with her all day on Mondays. So she would literally just be by herself. So I said, yeah, that's totally fine. Here's what I need though. I can't go pick her up and drop her off.
Yeah.
I need somebody to drop her off here and to please make sure it's before 9 o'clock, because that's when I start all my meetings. And I also need someone to pick her up, because I'm not going to be able to drop her off until like 8:30, 9 o'clock. And that's not good for her, and it's not good for me, and it's not good for anybody.
Yeah.
And my dad's like, yeah, no problem. I'll drop her off. I'll pick her up on my way home. I'm like, cool. So he did it a couple of times. It was fine. It went well. Then there was a day where he asked me like an hour before, because we didn't set this up on a recurrent schedule. It was just like, I'll text you if I need it. And I'm like, okay. So he texts me like an hour before and he's like, hey, can I drop Mia off? And I was like, okay, but please make sure you get here before 9, like preferably 8:45, 8:30. And he's like, okay, I'll do my best. I'm like, it's like 9:02 and I'm starting my first meeting and I'm like freaking out because I'm in the middle of a session with a client. So I can't get up and stop the session and like stop what I'm doing to make sure that I can go open the door for him when he gets here. So he pulls up at like 9:03 and I was a little heated. I did end up having to stop the session. I said, I'm so sorry. Like, please just give me a minute. I went, opened the door. I let her in. I was like, Dad, I asked you to get here before 9. He's like, I'm so sorry. There was traffic. I let it be because I had to come back into the apartment, get Mia settled down, and then finish the session. I finished the session and then around noon was when I had a break and I sent my dad a text and I said, hey Dad, I have no issue watching Mia. I have no problem, doing this, but I really need you to respect the boundary that I set. My meetings start at 9. I need you here before then, at least 8:45, because I can't scramble to start my meetings. And he was a little defensive about it, but we had a conversation about it and it went well. And from that point on, he respected the boundary and I made sure that I upheld my end in that. So my need, my boundary was met because of the 3-step process that I did in that and what I did within myself to make sure that that happened. So what was it that I did? What were the steps that I took in that? Number 1, I communicated to myself, what is the boundary that I need? What is it that I need? What is important to me? And why? And I'm sure this is a really hard step for people, even just getting that started, because it's like, boundaries? I don't want it. I don't know what to say. I don't know what I need in this instance. Have you seen that with people too?
1,000%. And I wanted to comment on number 1 before you transition to number 2, because so often do we fear the loss of what could have been. When we set that boundary, we fear what we're going to lose out on, right? That's where FOMO really starts to come out, especially shout out to our people pleasers in the room. And not only that, but we also struggle with coping adaptively, healthily with those complex emotions that really do come up when you do admit to yourself what you need and what you want. Yeah. Because a lot of the times, boundary setting and boundary honoring is very scary, again, because we go back to that fear of loss. What is this going to do to our relationship? Can they still love me? Am I still lovable? It's starting to eat at all of those fears. And number 1 is where it all starts. And it's so worth it, because then you can start to prove to yourself how lovable you are, and a couple other things that I'll comment on later. But yeah, of course, it is terrifying when you first start to get into this of like, can we really communicate to ourselves what we need and what we want? I think that a lot of people struggle in this, just step number 1 too. So shout out to you. You're not alone, and it's absolutely worth it.
In that example, what the communication to myself was around the boundary was, I need you here before 9 o'clock, not 8:58, before 9, meaning at least 15 minutes so I can get settled in.
Yeah.
And that ties into the kind of second part of number 1, which is, why is it important? That is really important to me because I try to make sure that I show up for my clients the absolute best that I can. And I cannot do that if I'm scrambling into the session, worried about Mia. And she's tiny, she's harmless, but she's loud and she's rambunctious and running around. And so I need to make sure that she's calm, she's settled. I'm sitting here at my desk and I'm in a calm, settled headspace to be able to come into the session. So what is it that I needed? I need you here before this time. Why is that important to me? Because I need to make sure that I show up for my sessions. Number 2, and this M is what you were alluding to. What might stop you from actually implementing the boundary? What might make it really hard for you to actually communicate this boundary? What might stop you? This is where the barriers really come in. The barrier for me, to your point, is this going to cause tension with my family? What might happen if I express this? Is he going to get really defensive? And am I going to be able to handle it if he does and when he does? What is this going to do to our relationship? Do I feel confident enough in myself to communicate this boundary? So I think that's really tying into what you were saying, that all of these fears and insecurities and these feelings of lack start to come up when we want to set boundaries. And that's why we probably don't do it and why most of us won't do it.
And one of the things that I want to share for our listeners here is something that really helped me lock this in and really tip the scales. And I've shared this with a lot of clients, and it's also helped them tip the scales, because all of us have that micro moment where, like, let's say, for example, number 1, we've grabbed and communicated in our consciousness and our heart and our bodies, and we've owned and leaned into what it is that we need or we want. And then it's okay, kind of approaching the like, well, now what? We might have identified the fears and we're starting to kind of put ourselves in the arena, for lack of better words. And these are those micro moments where we either show up within the boundary, or we yield, or we fawn, or we go back to what is normal, what is comfortable. And in those micro moments, essentially the boundaries, this is what was communicated to me. And after all this contemplation and working around this arena, is boundaries are really there to keep the people that you love and care about in your life as you grow and evolve. And that's something that when you realize that that's a tool, it's not to shut them out or to play from a scarce place. It's actually playing from a very abundant place. You love and care about your dad. He loves and cares about you. Just like everyone that's listening, you have one person in mind that you love and you care about. And likely, if you look at it, like, you want to have them in your life. You care about them so much that you want them to come with you as you're growing and evolving. You don't want them left in the dust. You don't want your relationship hurt or broken, or to your point, be like the tension to build from that. And so boundaries are a great tool. And step number 2 is a great tool to really look at, what do I care about? What do I value? And when it comes to a relationship and expressing my boundary, how can I make sure that I'm tipping the scales in the favor that can help create a win-win-win, even if and when there's fear present? In those micro moments, how can I show up in that?
Right.
Hey everybody, my name is Matt. I am the Director of Marketing and Communications at a radio station here in Central Massachusetts. I've been a part of the Evolve team for about a year now, and I can say it's been nothing but great. Kind of diving into myself and realizing that I need to step out of my comfort zone and build that confidence in my insecurities, but also maintaining who I am as a person. You know, this is a community that's not forcing anything upon you, that wants you to feel nothing but welcome. And it's just super genuine and super honest too, which I like. And again, just recognizing that you are your own person on your own journey, but everybody in the community is here with you. You know, we're all at different stages in life, and that's a very important thing to recognize. So Emilia, Bianca, and Derek especially have helped me get to the point where I'm able to kind of excel in my career and in my personal life.
I think also, even if there isn't a win-win-win, because there's not always going to be circumstances where there is. How can you hold your truth and your power in saying, this might be difficult for you, but this is what I need?
Yeah.
And how can we make sure that that happens? I'm willing to try to, see what's possible, but this is what I need. And being okay with that. And that's going to tie into a lot of limiting beliefs. That's going to tie into a lot of those barriers and our old narratives about ourselves. But that's where the work really is. And that's where step number 3 comes into play of, okay, I know what it is that I want. I've identified, number 2, what are the barriers that might get in the way? Number 3 is going to be, how do I now actually communicate this? How do I go up to this person or go into this encounter, and what is it that I actually should say? What I did was I started with love, and I said, hey, Dad, I love that I get to watch Mia. Like, I love having her here. It makes the apartment feel more lively. With that being said, and then I went into what I needed and so on and so forth. I know that you've spent a lot more time kind of cultivating those intentional communication structures. So how would you suggest forming this? Like, what's like a simple process people can utilize to actually do the communication component?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I love that you started with gratitude. What I've found and what is very simple is starting with gratitude. You start with gratitude and something that's true to you. So for you, it was genuinely expressing the love that you have and the gratitude that you have to be able to contribute to your family, to your dad's life, to whatever, right? Like, that's a true statement that you can bring into the encounter and start with gratitude and love. That is huge. Why? Because that calms down the central nervous system. It calms down all of the dysregulation that the anxiety and fear around asserting a boundary can really spur up for us. So when we start in that changes our physiology. And then when you go from that, the bridge was, with that said. A lot of times people will say, but here. They won't say and, or they won't say an inclusive statement that then transitions into the ask or the need, which is more direct. And what I encourage people is to go away from the but in certain arenas, because there's scientific studies that show when you assert a boundary, you start with gratitude and love, something that's true to you, and then you go into saying what the boundary is. I need you here by 8:45 latest. When the brain hears a but, especially if there's an unconscious narrative of I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, whatever it is, a limiting belief, that but immediately sends the other person in dysregulation, which then, because we notice that, we actually tone down what our ask is. So step number 1, start in care and gratitude. Step number 2, create a bridge that is walkable for both of you. So with that said, and thanks to that, boom, right? So that's the bridge. Step number 3 is approach it in a non-attacking way without inhibiting your truth. So you approached it, what I would say, in a very direct manner, which you can do at that level of your relationship. If it's someone you don't know, you might want to maybe go from an indirect approach, where what that really looks like is talking face to face. That's a direct approach, going straight for the throat of what you need and what you want. I think that can be really beneficial, and especially for people pleasers, building to that is really good. The indirect is maybe when you're walking with your dad shoulder to shoulder, or with whoever it is, and you express that boundary or need. That's more of an indirect approach that can be a little bit more of what we call a soft start. And then there's so many more intricate details around that, which I'm happy to have any listeners that want to go into that. A unique curtail to the situation, the relationship, because ultimately it is syntactual to that relationship based on the outcome that you want. We want to have kind of a strategy around what percentage of direct, what percentage of indirect communication should you use, right? And what would be beneficial per the outcome of the relationship that you want. We can reverse engineer that on a one-on-one call. I'm not going to do that in here, but I think that how you navigated that was more of a direct approach You built a bridge that both of you could walk to and fro from. And you didn't lessen your truth. You didn't lessen your need. You didn't lessen your want through that boundary. Right. And you started with love and care. And what that does, communicating in this approach, is what I have written down in front of me, is you asserted and honored your boundary in a way that helped to train, for lack of better words, the people in your life to treat and contribute to you living within your values. Because that's really what it is. You were able to honor and assert your boundaries in a way that helped your dad kind of upgrade the software of how he thinks you are and how he can treat you so that you can live more in the values that you care about, right? Showing up to the best of your ability on a call, right? And that's really, really important, because if we do not do that, we tolerate more crap that people unconsciously will give us. And that's really like the easiest way to say it, you know?
No, it's true.
And sometimes people don't mean to. A lot of people you'll find, like, at least I found in coaching and talking with so many people around this topic, is a lot of people want to treat you well. A lot of people want to contribute to you living in within your values. No one's really taught them how to do that, though. And if you're not establishing a boundary, and if you're not honoring that yourself, there's no opportunity for them to learn how to do that.
People treat you the way that you tolerate. People treat you the way that you have taught them that they can treat you, and they'll do what they can get away with. And I know that sounds really crappy, but it's true. Not in all situations, right? Some people are just, there are some really destructive people out there, but the majority of people, they treat us the way that they do because they think they can. And the way that we start to change that is through the boundaries that we set, the communication that we have, and the truths within ourselves that we honor. So me being able to have that level of dialogue with my dad has come from the last 5 years, I would say, of really getting intentional about who I am, what I want, what I'll tolerate, and baby stepping my way into setting boundaries. That was for me right now, that's like a level 2 boundary. That's a level 2 ask. 3 years ago, that would have been terrifying for me.
Yeah.
But I've worked really hard over the last few years to be able to set boundaries, to be able to communicate my wants and needs. And it started off really small. So like at the grocery store, when they ask if I want to donate and I don't want to, because I already do my own philanthropy and I have my own things that I do, I said no. It started with that. And then slowly building and building and building and building with people safe to me, like Emilia. So us sharing boundaries with each other and having those be honored and having those be nurtured. It starts there. Final takeaway and episode suggestion.
I would say if you're listening to this episode and you have checked in with your emotions and you're checking in on how you feel about this, and you're checking in and you're experiencing the emotion, maybe you tried to assert a boundary before, maybe you realize there's a boundary that you're really afraid to assert, like terrifying, kind of to what Bianca had said, and you want to get better at this. This is something that we work on so much with people just like you. And it is a skill. And I really want to say that. And what I mean by that is the more you can reflect and get that feedback loop, put yourself in the ring at a small measure and kind of build up with someone that already has been there, done that, knows it inside and out at a scientific level, it will help you really get to where you want to be. And I find that oftentimes we just don't assert the boundaries, and we don't know how to go about doing that because no one ever taught us that. So let Evolve teach you that. I would love to have a dialogue if you're struggling in this arena. And I think the final takeaway that I want to share here is our emotions are such great messengers for us to tune into. So afterwards, for example, you setting that boundary, there was probably huge emotional centers of relief and pride and gratitude for you pulling yourself through that, right? Those emotional centers that got lit up after you did that essentially was information that you needed to inform you of how to continue to respond. Say, for example, there was a lot of guilt, a lot of shame, a lot of blame in that, there's lessons too. If you feel guilty, if you feel shameful, if you feel dissatisfied with yourself, there's messages in your emotions that I really want to encourage our listeners to tune into. So final takeaway is that tune into your emotions around boundary setting and explore that territory, because those can be the trailheads for a lot of self-discovery.
Episode suggestion?
My episode suggestion is 207, how to drum roll please, how to be more assertive. This is something that I know a lot of our community struggles with, is assertiveness. And we have a Motivational Monday episode for you if you struggle with that. And honestly, that's something that I listen to when I really need a good bump. So that's there for you, girls. B, what's your final episode takeaway and suggestion?
That took you a hot minute, huh?
Well, the spreadsheet was covered up by something. So drum roll.
She was always a glitching. My final takeaway is that last statement that I said, that people will treat us the way we allow them to. And if you want to level up your life and your interactions, it really starts with leveling up your communication and your belief in yourself and really doing that inner work, which I've done, and it's made tremendous changes in my life, and it's an ever evolving process. So I will do this for the rest of my life.
It certainly is. If you have a scenario in your mind that you want to jump into, Bianca and I have 30 minutes on our calendar every single Saturday. Say, for example, you really want to assert a boundary and you're like, MB, help your girl out, help your guy out. We got you. Free 30-minute calls on our calendars, and we're also accepting clients. So if you're interested, we're a DM away.
Final episode suggestion is 138, recognizing and defeating your anxiety.
Hey.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you all soon. Bye,
so
everybody.
much love. Bye, everyone.